Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. Recently, the U.S. Surgeon General noted that among our youth, rates of anxiety, depression, and sadness were high before the pandemic. These numbers were made even worse by COVID-19. In fact, mental health-related emergency room visits by 12 to 17-year-olds increased by 31% from 2019 to 2020. After school and summer programs, which provide academic support, hands-on learning opportunities, and a natural space for students to explore, learn, and grow, are doing more than ever to support students' mental health. These programs are helping students work through issues, helping them to problem solve and cope. However, as this program has noted before, there are not nearly enough after-school programs, which means too many young people are missing out. And there are inequities in terms of which students have access to after-school programs, which can help them succeed in school and in life. This is where the Afterschool Alliance comes in, predicated upon the idea that all children have the right to access affordable, quality after-school programs. The Afterschool Alliance, in partnership with the National 4-H Council, is exploring ways after-school programs are helping students re-engage and heal. To help us understand the existing inequities in access to after-school programs, as well as the Surgeon General's report, today we welcome back to the classroom our friend, the Executive Director of the Afterschool Alliance, Ms. Jodi Grant, and joining her today is the President and CEO of the National 4-H Council, Ms. Jennifer Sirangelo. Ladies, welcome to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you so much for having us.
Glad to be here, Kevin.
Jodi, we've had this conversation before regarding the after-school programming and so forth. What does the new study, the After School Promotes Healthy Futures study, what does that really find now? What is that pointing out to us?
So what the study shows us is that all across the country, no matter where you live, parents recognize that after-school programs really have an impact on their child's holistic well-being. So the physical activity, the exploring, new opportunities, being with caring adults, being with peers, having fun, all of those things can make a big dent when you're looking at the mental health and overall health needs of our kids, whether it's, preventing inappropriate behaviors or just getting some skills that are going to really help you in the workforce later in life. So it's really exciting for us to see that parents recognize what we've been trying to do for a long time, which is positive youth development and the value of that. But it's also troubling because, as you know, we've talked about before, far too many of our kids, 25 billion, according to our survey, don't have access to these programs.
And Jennifer, help us to understand what is the role of the National 4-H Council in what we're trying to do here with increasing the number of or the access to after-school programming.
Well, National 4-H Council is the national nonprofit that supports the nation's cooperative extension system that is a part of the land-grant university system. So in New York, 4-H is delivered by Cornell Cooperative Extension in both Suffolk and Nassau County. And so our positive youth development program there is really designed to help young people build critical life skills, like we're talking about kind of coming alongside schools and building critical life skills and equipping them with the tools that they'll need to mitigate the inevitable effects of the adversity and the stress and the anxiety that they find in the world around them.
The focus a lot has been on developing those employable skills so that students can become ready to join the workforce. So how can any of the programs that are being offered out there, how can they now kind of shift their focus a little bit to help students overcome the stresses that they're going to be facing and help them deal with the mental health issues that they're going through now?
I was going to say, and then I do want to kick it off to Jennifer because she can tell you more on the ground, but some of this is things we've always been doing in after-school programs, which is, after-school programs are founded in positive youth development. So the idea of having caring adults, the idea of interacting with your peers, most programming, whether it's, participating in soccer or a poetry slam or first robotics or coding, is thinking about all of these skills like collaboration, teamwork, learning how to deal with the win, learning how to deal with the loss, all of these things that are very much wanted and desired by the workforce and by employers, but also contribute to a child's emotional well-being.
Jodi's described very eloquently, the kind of the outcomes in a young person's life of a positive youth development program like 4-H. What we're talking about today, too, is in addition to those employable skills, we know they need that resilience to all the adverse things are going to happen around them as well. The other way you asked, Kevin, how we, at least at the national level, try to help support and grow the 4-H programs. And one of them is in our programs and other youth development programs, we try to make our knowledge and curriculum and expertise available to other youth organizations. So one of the ways is we do really help bring a focus on some of the top priority needs of young people. So back in 2020, we did much like Jodi, we did with Afterschool Alliance, we did a team survey, and we found that about the state of youth mental health. We did it in June of 2020, so kind of early on in the pandemic. And we found then that 7 in 10 teens were struggling with mental health. But kind of the thing that hit me more was that 82% of teens, these were 4-H and non-4-H teens, really wanted to talk more openly and honestly about mental health issues and really wanted the adults to know that. So I've experienced that. I just recently did a listening session with one of our first, national groups of young people coming back together safely, in the spring this year, and it is really on their mind. These were high school students that have supports. They're in 4-H, they have family supports, and they were all struggling, saying it's just we know we've lost ground in school. It feels overwhelming, and we need the support, and we need to be able to talk about it. So I just couldn't emphasize more, Kevin, how important all the youth development programs are right now for helping the kids succeed academically and, in life and their future careers.
And Kevin, to add on, some programs have been fortunate because they've been able to tap into particularly federal resources, COVID resources, to hire social workers or hire other experts or provide some training to staff. But one of the other things after school programs can do is we're not experts in everything. So if we see that a child is really struggling, after-school programs can often connect the child or the family to other resources in the community that have a specific expertise to meet their challenges.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was actually going to ask that, because if we're talking about really listening to the needs of our students and they're crying out for this help and this support, they're telling us exactly what they need. When it comes to academics, we know, okay, we can get them tutoring, we can get them this program and so forth. But when it comes to mental health, how do we support them in that realm? Because that's that's kind of uncharted territory for the typical school and community. We haven't really focused on the mental health of our youth. We focus on the mental health of the elderly, but not so much on our youth. So what does that look like? What does the support for the typical 12 to 17-year-old student look like when they're asking, or when it's recognized that they need some type of support for their particular issues?
Kevin, from the point of view of a positive youth development organization, as Jodi said, this is what we've been doing all along. but we see the impact it has on mental health. Let me walk you through kind of what it looks like. It looks like, first of all, a program where a young person is safe and they belong. So they are able to be themselves. They are in a group where they are not alone. They have companions that are on a journey with them. In 4-H, that looks like a 4-H club where there's a group of different age youth that meet regularly and have social as well as community service connections where they do community service projects together. At camp, it looks like a pod, where we are our pod and we stick together throughout the camp. Our programs also develop independence where young people get to choose the things they do. So unlike sometimes in the classroom where you're told what to learn, in out of school programs like 4-H, you get to pick. So do you want to learn about photography? Do you want to learn how to take care of your family pets and dog? Do you want to do a robot? You get choice. And that's agency. That's, getting a voice in what you do. And in our positive youth development programs, young people learn to give back. So they're going to, not only if they're doing photography, they're not just going to learn how to do photography as an example. They will do photography, take photos at a elderly center where the older folks can take photos and send them to their family. Those, millions of examples of how young people take their 4-H projects and turn them into community service. And as they do that, they learn mastery of a skill or a task. They can, learn to code and take steps to learn how to code more deeply, moving all the way through. They can learn in a 4-H and a robotics program that progresses. While they're building their own skills, they're giving back, they're engaging their mind, and building their teamwork and those other skills that are really important. So I hope that helps you get a little bit of a picture of what it looks like, what positive youth development looks like.
Right. And to just jump in, like with macro words, like we're talking about kids feeling like their life has meaning, it has relevance, they're part of a community where they can really thrive and contribute. I think, especially with the older kids, some of these service learning projects that they do in after school is so valuable. And the other thing a lot of our programs do is they encourage kids to get out of their comfort zone. And because they're exploring things without a fear of being graded or judged as they would in a classroom, that too can really help develop resiliency and pride in things that kids otherwise might not have even tried. So I think there's a lot of wonderful things going on in these programs, and they're things we've always done. It's just nice to see a recognition of how important this is to a child's emotional well-being, right now, as well as to building skills that are going to really help them thrive in the future.
Since we know the importance of after-school programs and the multiple things that they can do for children to help their development, why the dearth in these programs? Why is it so difficult for students to find quality after-school programming?
Thank you so much for that question, Kevin, because it's so timely. And I would say that, we need more resources on every level, federal, state, local, philanthropic, to really provide these programs to the families that don't have them in their community, most often because they can't afford what's available, or there's no transportation, or the program doesn't exist. But one really exciting thing is that throughout the pandemic, after-school programs really stepped up. And you saw when schools were shutting down, after-school programs were offering virtual activities, in-person programming for children who could not be learning at home, doing visits to make sure kids were okay. And that was noticed by our federal government. So the COVID dollars that have been passed into law, and right now are in the hands of local school districts, specifically it says in the law that these dollars can be used to partner with community-based organizations to provide after-school and summer programming. So one of the things I want to encourage all your listeners to do is, if you are having trouble finding a program, talk to your school boards, get parents together, because for the first time since I've been doing this, the money is there in many communities, and we need to be connecting school districts to community partners that know how to provide this work so that we can reach more kids.
You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guests today are the Executive Director of the Afterschool Alliance, Ms. Jodi Grant, and the President and CEO of the National 4-H Council, Ms. Jennifer Sirangelo. That's great news to hear that there's finally money that can be put towards these particular programs. But I want to take a quick step back a little bit for you, Jennifer. And I know we've heard about, some communities may have heard about 4-H. They may have seen the commercials about 4-H. I know I've seen them in the past, but tell our listeners, those who may be a little bit unfamiliar with what the 4-H Council is and what it does. Tell us about what is the National 4-H Council.
Well, National 4-H Council is the national nonprofit partner to the Cooperative Extension 4-H program that's in every county and parish in the U.S. And so certainly in Nassau County, Cornell runs the 4-H program and has a fantastic program that is engaging young people out of school time in meaningful leadership roles, providing 4-H club experiences, camps, STEM activities, healthy living, agriculture, and civic engagement programs. So those are the exciting things that get the kids in the door. And then they get to learn all those life skills we've been talking about that help them build resilience and be successful in life today and in work tomorrow. So Cornell Cooperative Extension is really amazing and has some very exciting programs in Nassau County and neighboring and next door in Suffolk too. So that's a little bit about what we do, Kevin.
And how can people find out where they can get access to them, where they can find out about the programs in their neighborhoods? Is there a website they can go to get that information?
There is. You can go to 4-h.org, 4h.org, and find your local 4-H club or camp, putting in your zip code. For those in Nassau County, the website for your 4-H program is Cornell Cooperative Extension's website is CCE, so Cornell Cooperative Extension, Nassau.org, CCE, Nassau.org.
Jodi, how can parents really find out what types of programs are available in their areas as well? And how can they put pressure on their local schools and districts to bring in more programming?
I would encourage your listeners to go to www.afterschoolalliance.org. We have all sorts of information, including talking points, data, everything we've been talking about. There's strong data to back up both the learning of these skills and the value of these skills, as well as specific talking points to use with school districts. So www.afterschoolalliance.org.
Now, we also know that because of the pandemic and with the rise now, kind of the spike in cases that occur every so often, that some schools are closing their doors to any other outside programming or organizations coming in. What can be done to keep the after-school programs going, even though they may not have access to the actual school building? Is that federal money only open to school districts, or can other local organizations take part of that as well?
So, Kevin, I am so glad that you asked that question because first, the easy answer is no. These programs do not have to occur in a school building. And in fact, there's a host of partners out there, parks and recs and facilities that we can use, museums, libraries, community centers. And one of the things that's been, really troubling is throughout the pandemic, there have been communities where the school buildings closed. And if the after-school program was operating within the school building, even if they were going to have a small group of kids that were socially distanced, they couldn't use that facility. So, we actually did some research, and this is all on our website, of programs across the country that were creating hubs and places where kids could go that were not a school building, where they could learn, in many cases, virtually if the school was closed, and then in person with the enrichment that was going on in after school. And I think this more than ever really shows something that we've always known, which is that kids are learning all the time. and that you do not need to be in a classroom with a teacher to be learning, and that I truly hope that coming out of this pandemic, we can look much more at a community learning ecosystem that really involves many places within a community and many actors within a community to support our children and our families. And of course, in the end, that makes our community stronger. Speaking
Specifically about support for mental health now, when we start thinking about those supports, is there an opportunity or are there resources available monetary resources available to actually have a mental health clinician or somebody of that type on site to support those students who may have particular problems that they need to deal with?
The answer, again, depends program by program, but the federal COVID dollars can absolutely be used for that. And another thing is, federal COVID dollars can be used to support staff, to increase salaries for staff. I think the after-school field, just like teachers across the country, we're definitely seeing a shortage of workers, and we need to be bringing more caring adults into our field. So yes, short-term, those federal resources can be used for all of this. Long-term, when those federal resources dry up, we're going to need to think long and hard about how we continue those resources. And, as I always say, the good news is dollar for dollar, after-school programming is a great investment, and it's not that large. So if you look at all of the COVID dollars that are going out, billions and billions and billions of dollars, it's a tiny fraction of that to sustain what's happening in the after-school space.
And Jennifer, let me ask you as well. I know that one of the big concerns that parents and other caregivers have is, well, what type of curriculum is being offered for my children during these programs that they're going to? So I'm going to throw that question to you. What types of curriculum do you have that you make available to these other organizations that they can utilize with their students?
Right. Great question, Kevin. And I'm really proud. One of the things I love most about working with cooperative extension and 4-H is the research-based curriculum that comes out of the land-grant universities that run 4-H, like Cornell and others. So we have a number of research-based curriculums that are available. Let me give you a couple of examples. You can find them on shop4h.org, but one's from the University of California called Mindful Me. It's for elementary school kids to kind of learn the mindfulness and learn some of the skills about how to calm their own emotions and how to handle when they have anxious thoughts. And it's really designed for that very youngest elementary school students to begin to know that it's okay to talk about that and learn some of the skills they can build for themselves to build resilience today, but also as they get older. We have a couple others for teenagers that were built by and written by Ohio State University and their researchers. One's called Your Thoughts Matter. It's for teens that really cover important mental health topics and how to increase their own resilience and how to build their ability to support their friends and others in their mental health. And we also have some new lesson plans called Coping with COVID, and it helps teens really think specifically about how to cope with COVID and disappointment, and encourages them to journal and some guided relaxation. So those are some examples of the things we have available. If a parent wants to look and see what those curriculums look kind of like, we have some online examples in 4h.org. We have a section called 4-H at Home, which we built during the pandemic, and there's some great free little examples of some activities that can be done at home that stress mindfulness and with the building resilience. And you can see kind of they're using very common household items that you would have around the house, and it's a guided activity that a young person can do by themselves or with an adult. One's called Learning How to Stress Less, and another one's called Building Healthy Relationships, kind of help them build resilience around some of that unhealthy peer pressure that can happen. So I hope those resources are helpful for parents, and they can find them at 4h.org.
No, I think those are some excellent topics and excellent resources for our families and caregivers, and I'm sure that they will definitely find a great amount of use out of them. And I like the the way you phrased part of your answer, that there are resources that people can use at home. Because I think a lot of times when we think of after school, we're thinking outside of the home. We're thinking either in the school building or at some library or some other community center, but we don't think that we can do after school programming right here in the house. And that way it involves it involves the entire family now. So you bring the family unit even closer because they're doing activities together and they're learning together. And there's probably some things that a lot of the parents can learn that their students are learning at the same time.
Absolutely. You can imagine a mindfulness curriculum, big sisters and others and brothers. So there's a lot of resources available, and we're happy that they can be available to all parents.
Right. And I would say that's one of the hallmarks of after school too, which is that, it's not just the kids, but usually because these things are local, parents might be more likely to pick up their kids to interact with staff. There are often activities that involve parents, and it's a huge opportunity when you talk about having meaning and relevance for kids to take some of what they're learning home. So, it's wonderful to be talking about things like mindfulness, but I would say, we have stories of kids who are taking a cooking class where we're talking about holistic child development, and they're learning that, you can cook in a certain way that is much healthier, or experimenting with new foods that they might not have tried, and then they bring that home to their entire family too. So there's lots of great things that, hopefully we are reaching not just the child, but the rest of that child's family too.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big thing, especially not just looking at from a mindfulness standpoint, but also a healthy eating standpoint, because there's a lot of connection between what we actually put into our bodies and being in the ability to keep ourselves and deal with the stress levels that we face as well. So I think those are excellent ideas and tips for all of our families to really pay attention to. If you had one final thought to leave our audience with regarding the importance of supporting our after school programs for whatever the reason is, what would that thought be?
I would just encourage all your listeners to use their voices, because do all you can to support after school programs. And that is everything from, you might be able to volunteer in a local program to just letting your school board and other people around you know that these programs make a difference. Because I think we've gotten more visibility during the pandemic, and the more we can spread the word that after school programs really matter and really support our kids, our families, and our communities, the more likely we are to be able to grow them to reach more of these kids that don't currently have access.
Well, we would certainly like to thank our guest today, the Executive Director of the Afterschool Alliance, Ms. Jodi Grant, and the President and CEO of the National 4-H Council, Ms. Jennifer Sirangelo. Ladies, thank you for coming on our show today.
Thank you.
Once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.